Tēnā koutou katoa, nor Aotearoa New Zealand, ko Johanna Rhodes aho. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Johanna Rhodes. Today I represent Central Queensland University in Australia and the Nursing Council of New Zealand. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where I live, work and learn, my supervisors and all those who have supported me on this research journey. The silent burden, a theory of coexistence, assuming simulated patient roles. A cold hospital gown, the sharp smell of clinical equipment. You take a breath, and in that moment you disappear into someone else's world. Students file in, expectant, nervous, looking for something real. This is not acting. This is the work of educators who assume simulated patient roles in healthcare education. It is powerful, transformative, and too often unseen. Today I want to invite you behind the scenes, to listen to the stories, feel the weight and understand the silent burden carried by those who become the patient again and again for their students. But words alone can't fully capture what it means to step into these roles. So before we go any further, I invite you to experience what so many educators live again and again. This is the hidden reality behind the scenes, the weight, the emotion, the complexity of becoming a simulated patient. It's not just acting, it's a silent burden, emotional, psychological and professional, that educators carry again and again. Today I'm inviting you to walk with me through their experience. We will listen to educators' voices that too often go unheard. We will learn what these stories reveal about simulation. And I hope you will be inspired to lead change so this burden is never carried alone. As one educator told me, you put on the gown and you feel yourself disappear into the character. It's like your own anxieties mix with the patient's, and by the end you're not sure which is which. Another participant confided, after a big simulation, I go home and I'm absolutely shattered. not just physically, but emotionally. It stays with you. So what was the research gap? Well, simulation is now central to healthcare education, especially as real-world training grows more and more complex and time-pressured. Yet, while we invest heavily in student experiences, the experiences of educators, the ones becoming the patients, has been largely ignored. Most research focuses on students or actors, not on educators who guide, perform, and then quietly reset for the next group. This silence is not benign. It's consequential. It ripples. It affects job satisfaction, retention, and the very future of simulation-based education. So what happens? When using mannequins and task trainers, the participants often remain somewhat detached, but with role play or mask ed, they experience deep immersion. When I put on the mask, I'm no longer me. I become her. The result is a profound emotional and psychological shift. One participant described, "I'm so exhausted after the simulation, not just physically, but emotionally also." There's also a professional weight. I have to get it right. I feel guilty if I don't. And a nagging invisibility. We talk about student safety and debriefing, but no one ever stops and asks me, am I okay? I just carry on. So what did I do? I listened. My research began with two questions. What are educators' experiences and perceptions of assuming simulated patient roles? And what are the consequences for educators who take on these roles? I truly listened. I used Chalmers's constructivist grounded theory methodology, using qualitative interviews with 19 educators who assumed simulated patient roles using mannequins, task trainers, role play, and mask ed. Their stories, analysed line by line, became the foundation for a new way of understanding their experiences of becoming the patient. From listening and learning, a theory was constructed, a theory of coexistence. At its core, educators must constantly balance two powerful forces: altruism, a dedication to student learning, the drive for authentic, meaningful learning experiences, and egoism, the need to safeguard their own emotional well-being, recognition, and identity. As one participant said, "It's all about the students learning, yet I feel vulnerable, but I keep going because my students truly benefit." Another participant reflected, "You want to give it your all. There's nothing left for yourself. It's a constant push and pull." This is coexistence, being split as two, yet remaining as one. It's the paradox educators live by every day. At the core of a theory of coexistence lies the balance between altruism, that dedication to student learning, and egoism, concern for personal well-being. Positive feedback from students played a key role in reinforcing this balance, providing participants with emotional fulfillment from witnessing tangible outcomes such as student growth and student achievement. One of the main categories within the theory of coexistence is professional responsibilities. Participants often express feelings of responsibility. I have to get it right, and I feel very guilty when I don't. Another major category in the theory was transference and immersion. When using mannequins and task trainers, as previously said, the participants did remain detached from the role of the patient. With roleplay and masked, however, this was very different, when participants experienced significant transference. I put on her makeup. I put on her glasses. I'm no longer me. I'm now her. This experience speaks to the depth of immersion, highlighting the emotional and psychological shift that the participants experienced when assuming simulated patient roles. This experience spoke to the depth of immersion, highlighting emotional and psychological shifts. This brings us to internal conflict, where participants struggled with balancing professional responsibilities and emotional self-care. They often faced the internal question, is real too real? However, that positive student feedback and the visible outcomes, such as improved clinical skills, the enhanced student confidence, provided that emotional payoff that validated the participants' emotional sacrifices. The feedback helped mitigate the emotional toll, making the altruistic commitment more sustainable, while also reinforcing participants' well-being. Let's pause here and summarise. The participants were balancing the weight of altruistic commitments to student learning while managing the emotional and personal toll of assuming simulated patient roles. This balance between dedication to student learning and the need to manage emotional self-care directly impacted both educator well-being and the effectiveness of the simulated learning experiences. Let me now take a step back to delve deeper into the theoretical implications of a theory of coexistence. While emotional labour has long examined the complexities of service and education roles, a theory of coexistence expands this understanding by incorporating the dual nature of emotional labour, particularly within simulation-based education. In this context, emotional labour is not merely about managing interactions with students. For educators, it also involves negotiating institutional neglect, where emotional investments are neither formally recognised nor supported. As theorised, emotional labour involves regulating one's feelings to meet external expectations. However, for educators, this regulation extends beyond the classroom, beyond the dynamics, and includes managing internal emotional conflict and the need for self-preservation. A theory of coexistence emphasises the challenge of integrating emotional labour with professional identity. This involves managing internal emotional conflict and the need for self-preservation. This duality sits within a broader story of emotional labour. Educators' work goes far beyond classrooms or knowledge transfer. It's also about managing their own emotions, balancing their professional responsibilities, experiencing internal conflict, transference, and a need for self-preservation. Positive feedback and student growth provide emotional payoff, but institutional recognition is rare. Professional responsibilities weigh heavily. I feel guilty if I don't get it right. To learn more, I drew on actor network theory, seeing how people, props, policies and technologies all interact to shape simulation experiences. Actor network theory was developed theory was developed by Bruno Latour and others and offers a framework for understanding how human and non-human actors, such as people, objects and technologies, interact and form networks that shape the social and material world. Actor network theory helps understanding of regarding how educators, students, simulation technologies, institutional policies interact and shape educators' experiences. In the context of a theory of coexistence, actor network theory is instrumental in understanding how this all integrates together, how they're all interconnected within a simulation-based education environment. By aligning actor network theory with a theory of coexistence, we can better understand how educators' emotional and professional experiences when assuming simulated patient roles are actually co-constructed. Actor network theory shows us how the educator's emotional and professional burden is shaped not just by personal dedication, but by the whole network of relationships and expectations, which are often invisible, but powerfully felt. Why, therefore, must we lead the change? Understanding alone is not enough. If listening and learning stop here, we fail. Too often, simulation is seen as just acting, not skilled, high-stakes educational work. Few policies recognise this labour. Most institutions provide support for students, but rarely for educators, leaving them vulnerable to burnout, disengagement, and feeling undervalued. If this continues, we risk losing those who make simulation possible. This is a tipping point for the profession. So how do we lead change? Well, my research offers a practical, evidence-based framework for supporting educators in simulated patient roles. It has 3 pillars: balancing realism and well-being. Authenticity must never come at the cost of educators' safety or mental health. Institutions must prioritise educator well-being. This is non-negotiable. Structured support and recognition. Mandatory debriefing for educators after simulations. Peer networks and professional supervision should be offered and accessible. Formal recognition of educator labour in policy, appraisals and standards needs to be visible. We require evidence-informed policy and accountability. Simulation standards must require educator protection and support. Standards must hold organisations accountable for educator well-being, not just student outcomes. As one educator put it, it's time for our work to be seen, to be protected, to be part of what's measured and valued in simulation education. If we are truly listening to the real lived experiences of educators, if we are willing to learn from the voices too long silenced, then we must also lead change by enacting policies, recognition and support that ensure that no educator carries this burden alone. Behind every transformative simulation lies an educator bearing a silent burden: performance, care and selfhood. Let's ensure that when the mask comes off, educators are not left alone with the weight of their performance, but are met with acknowledgement, support and gratitude. Together, listening, learning and leading change, we can make simulation-based education not just transformative, but for students, but sustainable and just for those who make it possible. Ngā mihi mai aho. Thank you. I welcome your questions and your commitment to making this change real. Kia ora.